Hey Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl, and I don't have the time to do a full video today, but I did want to check in briefly before the game tomorrow against the Kansas City Chiefs. I also didn't get a chance to do a reaction video to the game against the Redskins, but just some quick thoughts. The way I'm going to do the reaction videos this year is I'm going to do what I refer to as studs and duds. The studs for the game, number one for me was the defense. I thought the defense played real well. Jim Schwartz concerned me with the very first drive. He didn't show much pressure. But after that, he continued to bring it. So I don't know if that first drive was just trying to lure Kirk Cousins into a false sense of security that the blitz was not going to be there, but it certainly kept Cousins off balance for the rest of the game. Obviously, the interception that was thrown by Cousins in the fourth quarter was huge. In fact, I really thought that was the turning point of the game because I really felt a lot better about our chances after that drive and the way we ended that. My other studs for the game were Carson Wentz. I really thought he had a great game and really showed that continued progression and hopefully to becoming a top-tier quarterback in the league. The first touchdown was just something of beauty and really just shows how great of a playmaker he can be even when everything around him seems to be going wrong. And then my two other studs for the game were the two guys he was throwing to, which was Zach Ertz, who had another great game, and we've gotten on him in the past for getting off the slow starts and great finishes. Maybe some other time I'll explain my whole rationale behind that, but I think that it's sort of a logical progression that he would be good at the beginning of the season as he continues his continuity with Carson Wentz. But I really expect big things from him this year. And then Nelson Aguilar was the final stud for the game. That catch that he made for the touchdown right at the beginning, I think really showed hopefully his progression and his updated confidence that he has. Making that catch was something that probably last year he probably drops that ball. It was not an easy catch. It wasn't right in his belly. He had to reach up and grab it above his head. So I think that showed a lot of promise that maybe he is finally developing into a quality receiver. My duds for the game, the first one is Doug Peterson. Some of his play calls I thought were ridiculous. The little sideways backward pass in the first half really, I think, just sort of underscores that. Just was sort of a ridiculous play, cost us a turnover, really sort of stalled the momentum that we had going up to that point. Some of the other plays that play calls he made, I know in the second half, in the fourth quarter actually, he had that little wide receiver screen that he had Wentz throw, and Torrey Smith missed a block, and as a result, it ended up losing yards. And that was another important play, and I don't have a problem necessarily with the play call like some people do. I have a problem with the way it was executed, and I have a problem with the players he was trying to execute it with. If you know that's the play, then that's going to be the only read on that play. Then why don't you have Zach Ertz or Brent Selleck out there instead of Torrey Smith? Those guys are tight ends, they're bigger bodies, and they're more used to blocking in those kind of situations. So have one of those guys out there that is more natural for blocking, and maybe that play does break and go for positive yardage. And my other dud of the game was Nigel Bradham. There was a horrible holding call that was called against him. I thought it was a good call. I think it was the right call, but it was a costly penalty where we could have gotten off the field on a 3-and-out deep in their own territory, so we would have gotten good field position. Instead, what happens? The Redskins march down the field and score on that drive, a long drive, and it really sort of switched the momentum of that game. And before that, the Eagles were really sort of running away with that. So I thought that was a real critical play and really almost ended up hurting us and losing us the game. I never like to blame things on one play or one penalty, but that one really, I think, was a big one and sort of changed the momentum of that game and then really put that game in question until the end. And then I wouldn't call him necessarily a dud, but a guy that is really starting to concern me is Wendell Smallwood. It's not necessarily his running abilities or lack thereof. I think some of that has to do with the offensive line. My real concern with Smallwood is he's really one-dimensional in that all he can do is run. He's horrible at pass blocking. And, it's almost to the point where you can't even have him out there on third down. And you've got to put a smaller guy like Sproles, because Sproles is actually better at picking up blitzes. So it's a concerning thing that I'll be watching. I'm not going to, like I said, I won't consider him a dud for the game, but that's something that could potentially become real costly going forward. So let's talk about tomorrow's game real quickly against the Chiefs. Obviously, the big storyline from this game is going up against the old coach, Andy Reid, and going up specifically against his protege in Doug Peterson. Hopefully, Peterson has learned some things from last week and will, maybe try and establish the run earlier and really try and stick with it as opposed to just going pass, and falling into sort of the Andy Reid syndrome. There's lots of times where I would think that this maybe game would be one where the Eagles could sort of catch the Chiefs on an off week because they're coming, it's going to be sort of a letdown game for them after having beaten the New England Patriots in week 1. And they have a division game against the Chargers next week, so it's sort of a in-between game. But two things sort of cancel that out. First of all, Andy Reid's going up against his old team, so that's always going to be something that, even though it's been a few years, I think that's something that a team will always get up for. And the other thing that sort of cancels out the letdown from the Patriots game is the fact that the Chiefs are on extended rest. So if this had been, a game where they had played on a Sunday night and then we're coming in next week to play on a Sunday afternoon, then maybe you sort of catch them in a down game. But I really don't think that that's what's going to happen in this game. I think that the Chiefs, with the extra time, we always know Andy Reid does usually a little better with extra time. So I think that's going to cancel out all those other intangibles. I really think this is a tough game for the Eagles to win. Kansas City is always really good at home. And clearly they are a talented team after beating the Patriots on opening night. With us missing Ronald Darby, that's also potentially really going to hurt us with some of their wide receivers, as you're going to have to now put Rasul Douglas into play, and he's going to have to play a much bigger role. And obviously, he didn't even play last week; he was inactive. So it's really going to be sort of a real test. This defense is going to have to get pressure on Alex Smith. I thought maybe that would be a good way to attack this team. But then, I heard the stat that apparently last year Alex Smith had the quickest time from snap to pass of any quarterback in the NFL last week. So he gets rid of the ball fast. So it's really hard to sort of get any pressure on him. If the Eagles can get pressure on him, I think that is the key to winning the game. And I think also the other key to winning the game is establishing the run. That's really what we're going to have to do in this game, is to sort of keep their offense off the field. And then Zach Ertz is going to have another big game. And he could have a big game since Eric Berry, their safety, isn't going to be playing. So I think that's a possible mismatch for us on the offensive side of the ball. But I really, like I said, think it's going to be a tough one for us. As a result, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Chiefs to win the game. My score is going to be Chiefs 27, Eagles 23. The scores that I predicted for last week and the last week of last season were right on the nose, down to the very points. So I've gotten 2 of them in a row right. Let's hope I'm wrong this week, not only on the score, but on the outcome. And maybe the Eagles can find a way to win this game. I'll try and check in afterwards, let you know my thoughts. Until then, fly, Eagles, fly.